Rajan Madhok to say what he thinks of the book, and I would love for him to recite a poem that he has written. I asked him specifically. So over to you, Professor Rajan Madhok.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for asking me to join this panel for the launch of your book. Congratulations to begin with, Yasmin, on undertaking this important piece of work. I'm happy to be here, but at the outset, I should declare that the discussion today is more for my benefit. I'm not sure how much I can contribute. And the reason for that is that I'm not an academic and certainly not knowledgeable enough about the science of your work. And I'm also not up to date with the literature on Black and minority ethnics and particularly South Asian doctors. So my comments are going to be from a lay point of view, albeit a rather informed lay person, having been involved in some of the issues in the past, as you mentioned, Yasmin, in your opening remarks. And overall, I want to begin by thanking you for undertaking this piece of work and certainly publishing it, because it does provide a very detailed account of a very specific cohort of doctors who came at such a critical juncture for the NHS in the 60s and 70s, because although Naib Bevin had the vision and NHS was established, it had begun to wobble by that stage, by the 60s. And I sometimes do wonder if we hadn't had the influx of this critical section of doctors from overseas, would NHS have actually survived? As your account amply demonstrates, it was not easy for the majority of them. It is quite a hard challenge they undertook, but they overcame them. And that is why in 2020, during this very awful pandemic, we still have a functioning NHS. So to begin with, I want to salute all of them for coming here. And as your account goes on to demonstrate, they did it at tremendous personal cost. Because from my own experience, although I came to do hospital medicine to begin with, I can vouch for the validity of your findings. Simply because most Asian doctors that I'm aware of did not come here to become GPs. In fact, the training that we used to have in those days, we had no idea about general practice. We were all hospital practice driven. So getting into general practice was actually living your dream. And you referred to socio-professional downgrading, and many of them did that and did it quite successfully. So I can actually vouch for that because that is my experience too. I came in 1980. I've just completed 40 years of my time in the UK with some periods overseas elsewhere. And it is the same experience, relying on networks, friends, jumping from one job to another, every 6 months finding a job, somehow doing my exams, doing my FRCS and so on, until I hit that brick wall when the consultant took me aside, have you considered public health? And that's what took me to public health. So I think it is a very important, and as Professor Ford mentioned, it's a very historical, it'll be very relevant, and I think future generations will be able to look into it and learn from it. I think you have tried to tackle, and well, a very challenging theme of their integration into the society. Because integration at both levels, at the personal level as well as at the professional level, how well they integrated into their communities, locally as members of society, and how well they integrated into their professional organizations. And my sense is that integration is not a one-off thing, it's a continuous activity. And particularly for South Asian doctors, because it is not as if you break through a glass ceiling. You break through one and you find another glass ceiling. So it's a perpetual adjustment and readjustment. And it also depends on the stage of your life. And I think you have given some very important clues in terms of what future research could be undertaken to particularly follow this specific theme of integration. And just to give one or two examples. So the kind of thing that struck me were, how did they come? How many of them came with spouses and how many brought spouses over later? Or how much was their intermarriages in some of those? How much are they able to contribute back home? And most importantly for me, what is happening to these people when they are in the retirement now? And sometimes I do wonder whether they are at peace, whether they feel with the benefit of hindsight, was it a right decision to have come and be dislocated? And this is where, if with you refer to it, and I'm taking too much time, you refer to the poem that I wrote and you suggested I should recite it, because I do feel that there are two separate issues here, overlapping ones. One is the issue of race and discrimination, and second is the dislocation faced by all immigrants. And I think the two collide here for South Asian doctors, which proposes additional challenges. But I leave that to you to ponder and for other researchers to pick up in time. I'll finish off by reciting the poem that you asked me to do, and it's entitled The Immigrant. Leaving on that jet plane for the distant shores, dream come true, going to England, new start, new life, excited and daunted. Will I make it? Will it be worthwhile? Will I miss folk back home? Will they miss me? Fast forward 3 decades, neither Indian nor English, pulled by both, resentful of both. India of youth gone, England has changed too. Or is it me, unable to adapt, rootless and restless, the first generation immigrant? I written this a few years ago, but that's one take on what happens to people who came during that period. But once again, congratulations. I'm so pleased that you took the challenge and has created this very important piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan. I don't know what happened to Yasmin, but shall we continue with Tariq so we don't have a break here?